everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 3 of March Comes In Like a Lion, aka 3 Gatsu no Lion, and oh my gosh, I really am loving this series. I'm really enjoying it a lot because Ray is such a little summer child. He is so, you just want to love him. He's so lovable, even though he's so gloomy sometimes. He has reasons to be gloomy, as we are slowly seeing, and he's just a kid that I just want to give a big hug to and be like, it's gonna be okay. And I'm glad that Ray has these older friends, like with Akari, with Issa and Smith that we met last episode, and that he has someone his own age like Nikaido and then Hina and Momo that he can relate to. Like, he has a great support network around him, which I feel is really important because Ray does not have things together. Ray is like, on the outside, Ray seems like a successful pro shogi prodigy that's just getting through high school and like whizzing through, but beneath the surface there's so much else at work with his character that you're like, no, things are not squeaky clean at all. It just, for some people, may seem like that. So I'm really enjoying this series so far and what it's giving us, but I've got some comments I want to talk about before we start. So several people have pointed out that I am not watching the previews. No, I don't usually like watching previews because I like going in blind, like 100% be surprised by what's going to happen. But the downside of that is that I don't get to see the end cards. But just like with Kuroko's basketball, which I'm really appreciative about, several people have offered on the Discord to share the end cards when we get to certain episodes. So I do have the end cards for episodes 1 and episode 2. And next week I'll talk about the end card for episode 3, which is what we're watching today. Episode 1, there's a whole story here that I'm gonna have to bring up in Berserk Volume 12 or Volume 11. I'm gonna have to bring it up in Berserk Volume 11 for sure, as well. But apparently the creator of the first end card, the artist, they're all going to be different artists that have contributed to this, is Miura. The creator of Berserk, has done the first end card, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. It's Ray. It's in Miura's style. It's beautiful. I'm up to volume 10 right now of the Berserk manga, which is crazy. But Varanus talked about the author Chika Umino, which is a woman. I didn't know there was a woman author for this series, so kudos. Apparently, and Koji Mori, another author, were narrative consultants with Miura on how to write women. Because I know Miura, who's the creator of Berserk, is friends with Kusanagi, who is the author of the shoujo Yona of the Dawn, and I knew that he had consulted with her before on writing female characters, but apparently Chika he went to along with Koji Mori and had them as narrative consultants throughout his series. And apparently Miura was a big March Comes In Like a Lion fan, which makes sense. The series is great so far. And later, apparently inspired later chapters. I'll get to it in Berserk. We'll see. But the rumor was, apparently, so says Varanus, which this may be true or not true, that Chika, the creator of this series, might have been Miura's like secret girlfriend. I don't know. Who knows? Unfortunately, Miura has passed, so we don't know the answer to these questions. If anybody has articles or things they want to share in the Discord, go for it. I would love to read about it. I'll just have to make sure they don't have Berserk spoilers in them. Or spoilers for this series, but I thought that was fascinating. But I like that Miura got to do the first end card. Seems fitting, right? Seems interesting. And also, Death to Boredom shared the end card for episode 2, which is apparently by Aki, who is it by? It was by, I want to get this right, Aki Kondo did this. And it's super cute! It like has a very much a Little Red Riding Hood theme, except all the girls are the wolves. I'm hoping that's not Grandpa there on the plate. I'm hoping that's not the case, but I like that Ray is Little Red Riding Hood. That's kind of actually cute. And he's smiling there with his little glasses. He's actually really happy and smiling. I'm like, oh, I love it so much. So I thought those end cards were super cute. I'm excited to see them as we go through the series, and I'm excited they're done by other mangaka. That's really, really interesting. I like seeing our characters drawn through that different perspective, right? Whit Wong talked about Ray equals the name Ray means 0, which in the first episode, the one woman was like, oh, you want to go with the name 0? Sure, I guess. So I guess they were talking about like Ray meaning 0, which is interesting. And then Momo, as far as voice actors go, Kaku and Whit Wong talked about Momo's voice actress voices Frederica in 86. Hina's voice actress is Akane from Psycho-Pass, and I was like, oh my god, I love Akane, so that's really cool. Akari's voice actress is the same as Dominique from the Case Study of Vanitas, which is really awesome. And then the teacher's voice actor, Kaku and Whit Wong noted this, is the same voice actor as Geto from Jujutsu Kaisen. And I was like, oh, the teacher is that. That's so funny. Interesting. Also, Rei's voice actor is the same as Sakaki from Run with the Wind, which Sakaki's kind of an antagonistic character, so that's interesting. And Roland from Vanitas. If you've ever watched Case Study of Vanitas, Roland's character and Rei's character could not be more different. They are so polar opposites. So the range, right? Also, the grandfather, their voice actor, according to Kaku, is Jogo from Jujutsu Kaisen. Getting all of them. And then Rei's opponent / who I think is his foster dad, but we're not sure yet, is also Oshirai's voice actor from Ace of the Diamond. So Ochiai is an interesting character in that series. So interesting. And they're also Hiryu in Yona of the Dawn. Finally, Wushin Suibian noted that the manga for this series has been in Japan for a while now, but only last year in 2023 started coming out in English in the US and globally. And I was like, wow, I think that's so cool that a series that has such notoriety as March Comes In Like a Lion, because I've had so many recommendations for it and it seems to have a really big fan base. It's so interesting that a series like that is just now getting to get English publications, but there has been a big push to get Japanese manga with English translations, especially in BL out there and Danmai out there. So I'm hoping that will give it a good push to get them international as well. Because I'm only 2 episodes in this series and I love it so much already. So I'm glad stories like this are getting to widespread, get out to a bigger audience. And doing it in the form of a physical and digital print publication like manga is super exciting. So those are really good comments. I'm super ready to dive in and see what this episode gives us, but we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to check out this episode, and I'm super, super excited. So we are going to look at episode 3 of March Comes In Like a Lion, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. We're only 3 episodes in, damn it. We're only 3 episodes in, and I'm crying. So it's going to be one of those shows. It's going to be one of those shows, isn't it? Oh, no. So, yeah. Fine. God, it's going to be emotional talking about this episode. So I'm already steeling myself to be like, no, Romania, you got this. Let's keep it together. It's all good until the girl. And then, well, no, Nikaido too. I'm like, oh my God. So, okay. We're just going to go through this episode linearly and in a chronological order because I'll get out of track and I'll get ranting and going off on it. And my dogs are like, why don't you throw this one thing? And I'm like, sure. You've watched me cry, so it's fine. So let's just go through this episode. It's the match between Nikaido and Rei. Rei's been studying up, and I don't really want I don't want Rei to get curtains. He has his little futon and he has his board and everything. There's something very interesting about Rei, and I find Rei fascinating because people have talked in the Discord about how they relate to Rei. My thing is I don't. I don't quite relate to Rei to some extent. So there are some things that Rei does that I'm like, oh, I know how that feels, and I can relate, and we'll talk about it later. But there's parts of Rei, like the fact that he's not unboxed anything. Everything's still boxed up. It's in part like he expects to not be there long. Like there's a sense of, I don't know how long I'm going to be here, so why unpack? Why make myself at home? This doesn't feel like a home. It just feels like a temporary space. And even if he ends up staying there, it still is a space that he doesn't feel a warmth or connection to. He feels more of that when he goes to visit Akari's house, it seems. So that's really interesting to me, that it's almost like he doesn't want to set up shop there and get settled in because he doesn't feel like it's it's a place for him to stay, which he's got a beautiful view of the river, riverside property. I assume that apartment's not cheap. So I would be like, if you were in like a city like Chicago, that apartment would be rather expensive. So I'm like, you have a great view. And that's kind of says something about his character. I'm like, you have a gorgeous view in front of you. Like there's a beautiful scenery in front of you. But to him, it's like, oh, I don't want the sun. Like it's almost not missing the forest for the trees, but the beauty in front of him is not what he focuses on. Instead, it's just like, oh, I was like, don't make yourself more in the darkness, Ray. Don't do that. I want him to like be able to like spread out. He does have a Tupperware thing of chicken, fried chicken, and the milk. So he's got that. Is that even milk, or is that like half and half that he's drinking? It's like, oh, I gotta turn the sound off. It's literally like, yeah, just straight up milk, 100%. And so then he just puts the piece of chicken beneath the bread. Now, I can relate a little bit to Ray because I don't like grocery shopping. I actively hate shopping in general. I'm like, ugh, I don't like going out and shopping. So I will like eat the food in my house down to the last thing and then go shopping because I'm like, I hate doing it. So I cannot blame him for being down to like just a piece of bread and just a piece of fried chicken. I've kind of been there before being like, this is the last egg and this is the last piece of toast I got, but I'm going to eat it because I don't want to go grocery shopping yet. And it's almost like he was waiting till after the match to go get the food and the leftovers from the girls. And so he's like, this is the game in the 6th block of the Lion King tournament. Mufasa's judging. Who knows? And Harunobu Nikaido is my opponent. It's almost summer vacation. And this is our first match after becoming a professional player. So I like the idea that both of them have been childhood rivals, even though Ray doesn't want to acknowledge it. And this is their first professional match together. I like that Ray, being a high school student, is kind of like in the background, not even really acknowledged. He's like, yeah, I got to go to high school at some point just to show up. But the shogi matches are what's my bread and butter winner, supposedly, even though you wouldn't know he's a professional player from like the state that he lives in right now. He's being very frugal about everything. And we don't really know the amount of money that he makes. The teacher could be exaggerating. We're not sure. So Harunobu, they talk about the summer vacation, like the shogi tournaments for children that are held on the roof of a department store. And there's like all the carnival rides, everything. There's like a lady with Luffy's hat in the background from One Piece, which is kind of funny. The crane games. What's interesting is that you have these situations where in the carnival, there's all these kids with their parents and they're all smiling and laughing and so forth. Then you have Nikaido and Ray, who both of them seem to, Harunobu and Ray, they both seem to not have much parental interaction and involvement. Like neither of their parents are there. I'm sure the butler's like off in the distance watching, but neither of their parents seem to be there supporting them. So it's kind of interesting. And we don't really know exactly the situation with Ray and like, was he with the foster family at that point? Was he with his real parents still? Was this before or after their accident? We don't know. But it seems like, unlike the other kids that you see shots of them with their families, we don't see that with Ray or Nikaido. It's just them. I will say, I am a little disappointed at this department store. You have this shogi tournament on the rooftop outdoors in the middle of July, and you don't have like a fan blowing on them or anything. I mean, maybe it's just my American ass being like, there is no way. There would be so many complaints from parents if there was not like a fan hooked up. Like, and if you say that you don't have like electricity on the roof, get a generator. Like, get a generator, run an extension cord. I'd have had that generator popped in. You can get like a 500 amp generator that's only like 20 pounds, set it here, get an extension cord, plug in a little power fan, and have it on these kids. These are children, sirs, madams. Like, Nikaido has this bottle of water there, but these other kids playing shogi don't have any water. I'm like, I just imagine, had this been happening in the US, they would never have this without fans, or if it wasn't indoors. Like, I can't imagine, and I'm sure people will say, well, that's just blah, 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 blah. But I'm so floored that there wasn't like a fan on these children in the middle of July as they're about to pass out. That's so wild to me, but it's a different culture. It's kind of like in Europe, there's not ice, and that blows my mind. I'm like, don't you want frozen water to make your drink cold? I don't know how that works. It was hellishly hot that day. Now, The thing about it is Nikaido, we find out, not only cannot handle the heat well, but has a kidney issue that he's had since childhood that I'm sure impacts him as well. But I'm just like, oh my God. And Nikaido, doesn't talk about it either, which is that speaks a lot for Nikaido's character, that he doesn't like say, oh, well, I'm sick all the time, so this is why. He doesn't make his condition an excuse. He doesn't even acknowledge it or act like it exists, because he probably doesn't want people to like ostracize him or think differently of him because of it. It's just, this story does so much with how Rei and Nikaido present themselves and then how they are under the surface. And I like the idea that Rei, at that moment during their match, for a second was like, he was sweating and everything, and I just wanted to end the match quickly and like just take him out as soon as possible so that he could go inside and get in the air conditioning. But then he's like, that was so arrogant. Like, I thought I was so much better than Nikaido that it would be easy for me to just mop the floor with him and end the game. But then Nikaido's like, I don't want to lose. Don't take pity on me. Don't look down on me. Take me seriously. I'm not just an easy opponent. And fought for the win, even though he lost. And Rei's like, crap, that was really arrogant of me. I shouldn't have done that. And now that we know Nikaido has like this kidney issue, of course, yeah. If he told people that, they'd probably like view him differently or take it easy on him or something because of his disease. But he's like, I don't want that. I want to be as competitive as I can be. I'm going to beat Rei at some point. Like, I love the way that this rivalry is set up between them. And I like them both fighting over it, right? And then he cried the tears at the last second. I love that the balloons are the indicator of how they were separating as the match went, the red and the blue balloon. It shows the difference between them. And he's like, I don't want to lose. He was here because he wanted to win. And he's like, that's something that couldn't be helped. And then they show them winning. The animation in this entire episode is absolutely gorgeous. The way that it goes like fast and slow and gets artistic and stylistic, it's beautiful. It's so emotional. It's epic. It adds so much to it. It's just like the game of shogi. It's literally like a chess game where they're just moving pieces. There's not really, it's one of those things where it seems low energy, but there's such an intensity about it that is hard to mimic unless you see it in real life. So the animation sort of makes up for it and compensates by expressing that energy in a visual way. It's so fascinating. I love it. And then he began to shed tears just like a manga amidst the crying of cicadas, and I silently gazed at him. And he's like, it'd be a face I'd probably be sitting across for decades to come. And the thing that's so mind-blowing about that is, Rei believes, whether Rei acknowledges Nikaido as a rival yet or not, he should at this point, because Nikaido's said it like 3 times already, but Rei has this assumption that Nikaido's always going to be his rival, that they're going to be like in their 60s and playing every other weekend and whatever. But we, the audience, know that might not be the case. Because of this kidney disorder that Nikaido has, we don't know how long he's going to be alive. And I'm like, Sho, you're already making me cry. Do not take Nikaido from us, please. I'm like, no, I'm not ready for that. Because Rei has lost his parents and his family. We don't know about his sister, but he's lost his foster family. He's lost his real family. He's dealt with grief, or with loss rather, and he hasn't really processed grief, I don't think, to the fullest extent. But he has this certainty that he wants this constant, and it's almost like he has this constant that Nikaido's always going to be his rival and always going to be playing shogi with him, but that is not guaranteed, and it's not a constant. And for us as the audience to know that, but know that Rei doesn't know that, oh no. And now I'm going to be waiting for like the moment where Nikaido's disorder like causes him to miss a match or something and becomes a thing, and then Rei's going to have to deal with that. And I watched a movie lately, and I'm going to put spoilers up here for it so y'all can see, but if this goes the route of I want to eat your pancreas, I'm going to have a problem with it. No, I'm like, Sho, don't do this. Don't do this to us. No, let Nikaido be okay. Let him be okay. Let his kidney disorder be fine. Let him still be functional. But we'll talk about the butler, because that is, oh, makes so much more sense there. But him like walking to go face him, and the train tracks, and like on the move, and the train and everything, and him getting there. I love the atmosphere. It's an endless cycle of winning and losing until you start losing your mind. And that is, if you are involved in a competition like shogi, whether it's a sport, an athletic event, or something like this, yeah, that's the pattern. And it's kind of insane, right? The thing about it is I coach speech, and, a speech competition is very subjective. And we have to tell students that compete, because they're like, well, my speech was better. And I'm like, well, it's kind of subjective. Like, you can do the best that you can, but it's really up to the judge whether they ultimately like it or not. And you can be objective in some things, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, the judge is going to like what they like. And so that's kind of the subjective part to it. And they're like, well, that's kind of insane. And I'm like, yeah, kind of. You're constantly giving these presentations with the hope that you can do the best that you can and these criteria, and you just have to hope that the judges agree with you and find yours better than others. But it's kind of subjective. There's a little bit of bias there, and it is kind of a cycle of winning and losing until you get the year over. But the thing about that is you don't really have time to lose your mind, because the speech season is just 1 year. So you only have an event for 1 year, and then you drop it and you find something new, right? But yeah, it is kind of crazy. Competition is kind of an insane prospect of a cycle till you lose your mind and lose yourself in it. So I like how that's worded. And Ray's just like, I've accepted that this is my fate. And as you gasp, I don't want to lose. Because I think Ray is confident in himself, and he's not lost yet. But at the same time, I think he understands that there will be a moment where he does lose. And Nikaido kind of gives him that moment in this episode. And he's like, oh, like his competition kicks in. Because Ray is competitive. He does not want to lose. And I like that Nikaido kind of shows him that and reminds him of that. I freaking love Issa and Smith. Issa and Smith, they are so great. And I ship them so much. I'm sorry. I am fully aware that Issa likes women because he's all up on Akari trying to get her to date him. Smith, I don't think so. But I feel like, I feel like Smith and Issa are definitely the stars of a old man yaoi that has not happened and won't happen until about 40 years. But, also Smith's outfits are incredibly 90s. There's something 90s about his outfit that's amazing. And he's like, your rival's waiting for you with incredible spirit. And then, I just love that it looks like an entirely different manga, the animation style. It's so good. And his face is already red. And he's like, yeah, just there, drawn. And Ray's like, what? He's like, I thought I would get here early and prep. I also like that Ray wants to try to have like the advantage of getting there early and getting in the mindset, but Nikaido beats him to it. So he has to like pull himself together and be like, ah, damn it, I gotta go. And Smith's like, yeah, he's got so much fighting spirit. It's like a different manga. And he says, like, next chapter, it's either checkmate or be checkmated. I love they tease Ray so much. I love both of them. It's so funny. Also, Issa gives off the look of Ishin from Bleach, and that's hilarious to me. It's great. He also has kind of the same attitude, which is really funny. Your lifelong rival. Like, Ray's like, okay, here we go. And then he shows up. Yeah, and as soon as he sees him, he realizes it's just Nikaido. And he's like, shall we begin? And then, yeah, the lemon and the lime, everything. It's like his yin and yang. And they keep playing. And I just love that it's this storm brewing between both of them. But just the animated intensity. And yet it's so quiet amongst everybody else, right? And then the game keeps playing. And he talks about how he's gotten stronger. And he's slowly and steadily attacking me. I like that we get to see inside Ray's mind as he's planning out the moves and everything. And then Nikaido does the move. And at first Ray's like, hey, is the air on? I like this one guy was like, oh, something's wrong with it lately. I'm like, how did you not notice the air was not on? How did you not notice that, sir? But he didn't. And he goes to check it. And again, Ray kind of vocalizes wanting to make things more comfortable for Nikaido. But Nikaido's like, no, don't take pity on me. I got this. He's like, this is heaven compared to the roof of that department store. I was like, what a badass line. I just love how they both remember the same memories from their times playing one another. It's amazing. And then he pulls down the move. And I love that as he pulls the lance in and Nikaido makes the one move, and it makes Ray go from like red to blue to green, and it's the most emotion we've ever seen Ray distribute in this match. Like, he's wide-eyed. He's like, why'd he pull out silver instead of gold? What is he doing? And like, it's the most emotion we've seen Ray show. And then he realizes he has to calm himself or he's gonna lose. And Nikaido's like, yes. And then in that moment, I love that he puts the glasses and fixes it, and he's smiling. Like Ray genuinely smiling, being like, okay, I don't want to lose. Let's do this. Like, Nikaido like got him back in the fighting spirit and got him all riled up. It's so cute. It's great. And then yeah, it went into the evening until Nikaido couldn't do anymore. It hasn't changed since we were kids. We'll probably do. And he's like, we'll stay like this forever. And that's when Nikaido goes out to the car and they're going to the hospital. And I'm like, oh my God, Ray doesn't have a clue, right? Like, he hasn't ate or anything all day. And he's like, Master Harunobu. And he's like, oh, Haneoka. And he's got the souvenir. Oh, and he's like, what about your vacation? What about traveling around the world? I thought you weren't coming back for 80 days. And he's like, oh, I had your mother take my place. Now, his mom, we see a picture of her. She looks actually rather old. Like, she looks like she's probably in her 50s, maybe in her 50s, maybe at least, which if Nikaido's like 17 or 18, she might even be in her 60s. It looks like she might have had him when she was older. But it's crazy that she went on the trip knowing her kid has this disorder and just left the butler with them. I'm like, what? But there's many types of parents in this series already, right? She's like, are you sure it's okay? And I'm like, your child has a kidney disorder, but okay, you're going on this 80-day cruise? He's like, being separated from you made me worried. And the fact that he's just sitting there trying to read and has his little cocktail, but he's like, I was in danger of having a regular heartbeat. And it's like, he didn't refresh at all. Like, he was so worried that something would happen. He couldn't enjoy his vacation. I'm like, oh. And his little tiny scrawny legs, like, Haneoka he's so cute, this little butler. But then it shows them driving off. And he's like, you haven't gone to the hospital yet, have you? And we'll see Dr. Morikawa right now. Like, he goes there all the time. And he's like, are you in pain, Master Harunobu? And they're not functioning well again, are they? And he's like, while I was gone, you probably weren't eating well. Oh. And he's like, I'm sorry, Harunoka. And he's like, it's all right, I understand. Oh. He's like, subsisting on hospital food isn't great. So we don't know how long he goes to the hospital, like how many times a week he goes. He was like hanging out with Ray that night, which it makes more sense now why he wasn't complaining about Ray's apartment, because hell, if he goes to a hospital all the time, Ray's apartment is probably great compared to that. I like this show. This show does a really good job of illustrating how behind the scenes in all these different people's lives, you don't know what's going on with them. So while they present themselves a certain way to each other in public, when you get behind the scenes, you see like a different side of them that they don't often show others. And that's just, And now it makes me want to cry because I'm like, Nikaido's trying to like have his rivalry and have his like his high school rival with Ray because he doesn't know what his future holds. And I'm like, it breaks my heart. I'm like, no. I'm like, oh, Nikaido. And he's like, it's hard to see how it's been for you all of these years. And he's like, but I'm here for you. That butler deserves a pay raise. Like, oh my God. Well, to get your health back. And he's like, I lost. He's like, but I won't lose next time. Oh, I love Nikaido. Oh my God, my heart, my spirit, my soul. Oh. And Ray doesn't even realize like what he's going through and how he still wants to be his rival. Oh, my heart. Just makes me want to cry. So then we have Beyond the Night Sky, which this chapter is just incredibly sad. Incredibly sad. He goes there at the end of Oban as promised. And I love these cats. These damn cats with their creepy voices asking to be fed. hilarious. I love that the cats just speak and somehow Ray kind of understands it and it's amazing. But them making all the little food portions for him, and I'm sure they made leftovers and did all of that. But I really like the spirituality this family has. I like that they follow these customs and traditions, and it's a way for them to grieve. I What I like about this show too is it touches on the fact that everyone grieves in different ways. Like you find ways to grieve, whether it's holding it in inside. Like for Ray, he's kind of like repressed. He's like, if I don't think about it, I'm not going to be sad. He's like, I don't want to be sad. So I'm just not going to think about it and it's okay. And then for Hina, she seems to like not want to show grief in front of her family because it's affecting her so strongly. So she goes off by herself. For Kari, it seems that she works through it. If she works through her grief, she doesn't have to, that's her way of processing and rationalizing it. And Momo's so young, she doesn't quite understand what's going on. And so for her, it's kind of different to process grief. And then for the grandpa, he has his own way as well. I talked to a coworker and she was saying that she had a son who was 6 and his grandmother passed. And it was their tradition to like go and see this like Polar Express in the city. And they went and saw it like the year she passed. He was like 5 and she went and saw it with them. And then they hadn't like she said her son was 5 at the time that she passed. So she didn't think anything about it. And he never cried or anything. He just didn't quite understand what was going on. And she said they took him to the Polar Express this last Christmas and it had been a year. And she said my 6-year-old suddenly was hit with all of the grief, like everything, him remembering her going with them on that trip. She's like, everything suddenly hit at once. And she's like, my 6-year-old experienced grief and started bawling in the middle of this Polar Express and didn't want to go. And she was like, I felt like a bad parent because I didn't think, after a year it would hit. And that's where it hit, that memory. And she's like, well, we can't go back and do that anymore. Because he was like, I don't want to go back. It'll make me think of my grandma and it would affect him negatively. And so it's just, the point of that story is that the series hits as well, is that grief is so customizable. It's so individualized. Like someone that would go on that annual trip and savor the memory of their relative that's passed and kind of feel like they're honoring them through it. For someone else, it's a traumatic thing. And you're like, nope, can't do that. And so everyone experiences grief in different ways and at different times. And Ray kind of sort of thinks about that here, being like, I've not really processed my parents' deaths. And I don't feel like I've truly, done what Hina's doing right now and letting it all out. And he's like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And God, I relate to Ray so much because I feel like in my family, like little things trigger me, as you've probably seen in these reactions, that make me like weep. But then when I'm like with family, I kind of get the role of being kind of like the Hina to hold it in and keep things together and not be sad about it until I'm on my own. And then I can do like her and just let it all out, right? That's kind of my way of processing. And I also feel like if I process grief, it's staying busy. Staying busy helps me to process and move forward as well. So I'm not like stalling myself. But the thing about is that I connect with Ray is that I often, and some of you may relate, but sometimes I don't know exactly how to react to people like going through grieving processes. Like if somebody was sobbing next to me, like what Hina's doing, I would be kind of like, Ray, I'd want to comfort them. But then I'm like, how much do you say? You don't want to get in their personal space, but then you want to comfort them. But like, what's too much? Like, or do they want to be by themselves? So the way that Ray reacts, where he's like, it's okay, we can stay here longer and you can take time to process. I think that's what I would do too. I think if I was in his situation, I would just stay next to that person and be like, we can stay here as long as you need to and just sit here and reflect and you grieve. And that's all I would know what to do, because I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm that like hug a person and like pat their head thing. That's not me. So I feel like how Ray reacts is very much what I would do as well. Like that all feels normal. And they left the little tiny set out for the parents. That's so good. And then I love the idea of like lighting the candles early to welcome them in and lighting them late so that they can't leave, and the little vegetable boats, the horses, to like let them get home safely. I kind of like that, because I feel like Ray doesn't have a lot of spirituality in his own life, and he doesn't really have a lot of traditions because his family's gone. So he kind of is just like this outsider. But I think the family kind of likes that he's that way, because sometimes you need to like talk to somebody outside of your family when you're grieving. Sometimes talking to your family is not the best idea, because you need someone that's from an outside perspective to kind of vent or share those emotions with. And I think that's why they appreciate Ray kind of being there, because he is this neutral party. Also, I am all for the cats being there to douse the sadness, because it got really sad this last half of the episode, and then they put the cats in there for levity, and I was like, oh, thank God. Otherwise, this is going to turn into Violet Evergarden, and I'm going to sit here and just sob my eyes out. But I love that he comments kind of about the solemn spirit. And he's like, this just makes me think of a sad ceremony that would bring back painful memories. And I think that Ray's kind of like, why would they put themselves through this? But for each of them, they remember and kind of memorialize in different ways, right? And then Hina, it almost seems like Hina is the one that's kind of outside of the tradition that, you know, Akari is all about the tradition, and it's how she processes her grief and displays it. And the grandpa's kind of like that too. And Momo's not old enough to really understand what to do with it. But for Hina, she's kind of like, well, this is not my thing. And it's like, yeah, understandable. So, oh my God. But just the idea of her on the bridge and him connecting it and it feeling like the car crash and the shattered glass going past his eyes, like the style of that. And I'm glad that he goes to stand up next to her, because those two people that came up, I was a little worried they were going to try to like get involved and it wasn't their place. So I'm glad that Ray kind of made them go away by standing next to her. And then the idea where he's like, it was just a lump in my throat. I'm like, same. I couldn't say anything in that moment. I was like, oh no, this is too much. I was like, nope. Oh God. It was really sad. And then she was holding it in for others. And I just love that Ray's such a good friend that he like sits there and lets her grieve. And I love how he describes it as, you know, we're both sitting here, you know, with these sad thoughts. She's crying, but I'm not, but we're still gazing at the same beautiful, beautiful July night sky. He's like, we're both here grieving in our own ways, and that's all we can do. What a beautiful episode. So gorgeous. I would go into more detail, but I feel like I would start crying again. I feel like I would start grieving again if I got too much into it, because it was really hard holding it back. I was like, oh no, this episode was so beautiful, but it was so sad. And oh no, we're only 3 episodes in, y'all. What have you got me into? But I like this friendship that we have established and developed between Nikaido and Ray. I love that Ray is kind of there for Hina. I love the establishment that we get with those characters. I love Issa and Smith's involvement. I love Akari. I love that the grandpa trusts Ray to be that outside party to follow with her. That was so good. So, oh my God. Please no spoilers, hints, or clues, but I'm really excited to see your thoughts down below. Oh my God. What do we do? So, but I'm super excited, y'all. I hope y'all are as well. So, in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 4 of March Comes In Like a Lion. Bye!